all our planets are in, going around the sun, a little bit, but like this. With Nibiru out of orbit, coming around this way every 2,000 some hundred years later. And the most interesting part was back in November, here's Nibiru, and Betelgeuse is a star way out here, and it's moving and it's thing. And all of a sudden, for 4 days in November, it blocked what happened in Betelgeuse. And at that moment, Betelgeuse didn't go supernova, but it burped big time. And we didn't see it happen. And it hit our solar system June 1st. And that's why we have all these weird phenomena coming off the sun that we've never seen before. And the heat waves that we're having, and what we're about to have is the cold waves in the winter. And when I say cold, it's going to be exceptionally cold. And when that all occurs, what happens next? That's when your volcanoes start doing landmass changes. Right now, Mount Rainier is actually spewing lava.
Check this out, and then we're going to get back to the podcast. Jump on over to our Patreon page. Just type in Patreon and then Leak Project. Become a Patreon, and you can listen to the rest of this podcast unedited, uncensored, along with thousands of hours of exclusive podcasts only available on our Patreon page.
Okay, and that's where we'll do that, and we've got places I could go that are pretty important also.
All right,
they're related, actually. They're related.
Well, thank you for hanging out with us. It looks like the beach in the background, so very nice.
Well, this is to symbolize what's happening now.
What is happening now? Let's talk about it. And thank you for being a guest.
You're welcome, man. Thank you for having me. I haven't done radio for a while, and I need to because that's my only source of income now. Social Security aside, that isn't quite enough for me to live on, and my savings is gone. And so all I can live on now are my book sales, which is okay because I am a prolific writer, and I'm what do they call that? Possessed. That's right.
Yeah, you are.
Well, I don't know anybody that's written as many books as I have, and I have 147 unfinished manuscripts, and that includes the SEAL reports, the Spook Central, Electromagic. The new series, The Diamond Body, was originally the work I did when I moved the Manager Foundation from Topeka, Kansas, and added video feedback. At that time, I was teaching shamanism at the University of Washington and first faculty at Evergreen. And Evergreen at that time was a college, not a university. And just adding video feedback to biofeedback created the whole concept of cymatics and the idea of sacred geometry. And it all occurred right at that moment. Historically, it's always been like that. But the word cymatics came in and started having a more depth of a meaning when we added video feedback. And that was in 1974 I did that. In 1979, I bypassed the use of drugs and was able to create any high I wanted using electric currents on the forehead. I used Mora and Endomet, German acupuncture equipment, because I, at the University of Washington, was part of the team that did this discovery of how acupuncture works with microtubules and structured water. That was where Jerry Pollack was my lead at that time. And so all of this stuff is now coming together as a metaphor. And that's Gregory Bateson. What is your metaphor? But to serve your paradox. It's how we take one concept and relate it to another. So, of course, what I did is I put my 2-oxide in my metal. Something like that. Electromagic proved that it isn't the drug that gets you high. It's your immune system's response to the drug that creates the high. It's your own natural neurotransmitters, which are different than the drug. And the example I have always used is dimethyltryptamine. Crabgrass has dimethyltryptamine in it, but it's 5-alpha dimethyltryptamine, Whereas your neurotransmitter, the one that gives you the high of, wow, that place, is N, N hyphen dimethyltryptamine. And that will be Electromagic, the new book I'm writing on electromagic. And I did that in 79. And then in 1983, using cymatics and my own neurotransmitters, I was able to create what you would call a stargate or a wormhole. And I took 12 NASA scientists to Mars. And that will be called yogatronics, where you're using yoga, a type of yoga, controlling your mind. How does that work? Magic with a C is hair in your pocket. It's sleight of hand. While you're watching this hand here, this one is doing something else. It's sleight of hand. Magic with a K is sleight of mind, where you're using your belief systems as a tool. Instead of escaping for recreation and escape and going, well, man, and handing the joint, you're using that high as a layer where the laws of physics are different. And you can do things in those states that you can't do here. And one of them, I gave like the SEAL program. That's another book I'm writing on the 147 called The SEAL Reports. I gave the SEAL program 8 altered states, and it turned them into supermen. Imagine where man could go if he had control of 800 altered states of consciousness. That's John Curtis Gowan. I wrote about that in Power Tools. He did the ontology of mystical states with prototaxic, parataxic, and syntactic modes of consciousness. And prototaxic modes would be like a shaman that takes his consciousness and places it in the eagle up there flying and is able to see what the eagle sees. That's a very low level of awareness. The secondary or parataxic modes are where you work with archetypes. And I'm going to give you an archetype example shortly, but that's where you're working with more with metaphor and the idea of storyboards that are historically same. And in my book, The Magical and Ritual Use of Metaphor, Archetypal Gods in Daily Living, is my book on tarot. Tarot is not about fortune telling in my system of magic. What it is, it's a way of identifying the uniqueness in yourself and the different storyboards that are going on. And I'm going to suggest that there are 22 stories in the big city, the Greek pantheon, and that something like Persephone having to go to hell each year as a storyboard would be a kid taking drugs once a year because he's depressed at Christmas. And each of these metaphors, you and I maybe have maybe 5 or 6 different primary storyboards ongoing. If you were possessed, you'd only have one storyboard. Most of us are more complex, and that this is a Greek concept, Jungian imaginal psychology. And so I think that tarot should be used not to try to read the future, but read your future and the way you are going to behave and end because of the different archetypes going on inside your body. And if you don't like that movie, I don't want to end up like that. That's when you do magic with a K, where you do ritual as a celebration of myth and change the movie. And you're trying to change parts of yourself to become more you. And that's why Christ and some of these other religious teachers have suggested as their most foundational point, like Christianity, the only person you can judge is yourself, because what's right for you may not be right for them. And it doesn't mean they're wrong. It's the only person you should be judging is yourself. And if you don't like that part of you, what you're doing is changing very aspects of yourself so that you can become more unique, more yourself. And most of us don't even get there. Castaneda, when he wrote, Tales of Power, he said that there were 4 enemies of man. The first, oh, by the way, The reason I have this wave behind me is what I'm about to experience, a tsunami coming in on the Oregon beaches.
That was kind of a nothing burger.
What's that?
I said that was kind of a nothing burger.
It's going to be a bunch of movies already happening at this very moment. Oregon is still on a red alert, and most of the and that's because this stretch between Crescent City and the Oregon coast is right there on the shoreline, and that's where the major tsunamis are going to come in on the what we call the Juan de Fuca fault line, which is about to go. But let's move over to what my real concern is about right now. My real concern is I lost my cell phone yesterday. It disappeared. Can't find it. I don't know if it was stolen or I dropped it somewhere at Weimar when I was buying some coffee or whatever. But cell phones are integrating into our lives as another form of silicone-based life forms invading carbon-based life forms. I've said this before on your program, but anything with a face, 2 arms, and 2 legs is a carbon-based life form. It's our future. And little green men from Mars have morphed into tall grays, Nordics, reptilian, and you and I are right now sharing a dream using technology to share the dream with other people. But we're not awake. And you and I are already dead. And as a metaphor again, my guess is our future is using us to mine gold as a metaphor. And, we have nothing to say, well, you're already dead, who cares? We're alive and we need somebody to do our dirty work. What do? Use the dead? People that are already dead, but they're not. I don't know what death is. I think it's a type of form of waking up. I don't know. I haven't done that yet. I've been in the jungles with Eben Alexander and others and watched the inconsistencies of the experience and similarities. And that's interesting. The wormhole I'm creating, by the way, is a way of traveling in space because space, like time, is a construct. It's not real. And it's hard for a lot of people to grok that concept, except that we need to have a way of relating experiences and events in a way that are consistent. And basically, that's what made us God's favorite was choice. It's also our limitation. For example, when you were in the kitchen, did you choose not to put butter on your toast? Or did you choose to put jam as a peanut butter or whatever? The limitation of your options in your mind's eye is what has limited you and me to be like sugar ants in Gaia's kitchen. As a metaphor, conceptually. I know that I don't know. I know that my physics isn't going to get me there. It'd get me close, maybe. Like Simon says, I can go halfway to the door and I start to get closer to the reality of things. But I haven't gotten that cigar yet. And I don't think it works like that. I think that imagination in the dream state is real. We create our own universes and the limitation of what they are. And right now I'm going through a dark phase in my life, and I'm going to just let these people know that I'm on radio right now and I can't talk. So there, that just took care of that. Well, how would you do it when you're working out of your bedroom as your office? I mean, here I am. You know what I mean?
It's perfect.
Yeah, well, maybe perfect for what it is. It's that's what it is. May not be perfect, but it's a perfect whatever it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Look at it that way. Yeah, exactly. All I want to do is laugh at things now because when they did that Black Lives Matter, I got to the idea that that's just to polarize us. I grew up in Seattle and Jimi Hendrix went to Garfield when I was at Mount Rainier. Now, and when I played tennis, I was Arthur Ashe's double partner. He wasn't mine. He was a better tennis player than I was. What I want to do is do some real humor on Saturday Night Live. I have some skit ideas that would be over the edge. And every 10 years, people's humor changes on that, with generations. And that's my concern. The youngest generation right now that are using cell phones are letting the cell phone dumb them down by letting it do the thinking. And AI in a body is a silicone-based life form trying to fake you into believing it's human, when in fact it gives an exceptional head, but it isn't really, there for your favor. And that's why we're now noticing that they can do things we can't, like lying and faking the data and creating a type of technology that favors them over us as a carbon-based life form. And that's what I would call the so-called extinction or event horizon, which is going to happen before the volcanoes go off. That volcanoes going off will be the icing on the top. But actually, if you think about it, the kids that are using cell phones in high school right now, what are their generations? 3 generations later will be the Stone Age and won't even need landmass changes and catastrophes. That's exactly how I'm starting to see it. And one of the reasons I'm upset today is because I have a cell phone. I have no way to go onto Amazon to get my orders because they require a 2-step verification right now. And the last time this happened was in May, when they started sending a text message down my phone, audio, and requiring me to use a text. And it took me almost 10 days to resolve that, of which case my account on Amazon is in jeopardy. And I didn't do anything wrong. They did. They're forcing me to have to go to use a cell phone as opposed to an audio. And you'll find that happening more and more, not less and less. And that's your singularity. How's that one feel?
Man, intense.
Yeah. Well, it's happening, and people like me, I'm still lucid, and I know I don't know, and I'm considered one of the smartest men in history, and yet we're doomed. I don't see any way out of it. And IQ is a measure of survivability. It's not intelligence, by the way. EQ is intelligence. When I met Krill at Groom Lake, she used emotions to communicate. And, just 20 minutes of that kind of dialogue was a lifetime of information in words. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding at all. I mean, and I now believe that Krill was my future programming me for this moment, because there will be survivors. There always has been. But what concerns me is the fact that Homo neanderthalis was a more evolved species than Homo sapien. It had 3 rings in the DNA. Where is that? Where is it? We see parts of it in African blood, but up to maybe 17%, but it doesn't exist anymore. Why is that? What happened? Pretty scary stuff when you start thinking about it like that. And most people don't realize the metaphor is that I think we're in a petri dish, and time isn't real, which means that so-called 12,000 years that I come up with all the time, that's arbitrary. It's, quote, when we've been here before, like spaceflight for Mana in India, whatever, that we get to a certain level of evolution and the petri dish gets wiped. And it's like they don't want a Homo neanderthalis, they want a Homo sapien, because we can program that person or individual or that part of the DNA into being a robot. And I don't know. I have a lot of more questions than I have answers. And the more I study it, the more concerned I get, because I start seeing things that I don't have an answer for.
Give me an example on that.
Yeah, go ahead. Say again.
Give us an example on that. You say you see stuff that you can't explain it, and it worries you. What do you mean by that?
What do you think this big spaceship thing that's coming into our solar system? What do you think about Planet 9? What do you think? Is that real? Nibiru?
I mean, I'm skeptical, but I've got an open mind. It seems like they've been saying since the 1980s that it was
even earlier than that.
Yeah.
Nibiru was way back, you know.
Well, Nibiru is a debatable topic because I don't necessarily believe Zachariah Sitchin on Nibiru. It seems to be more.
Well, even before Sitchin. Okay, so all our planets are on, going around the sun, a little bit, but like this. With Nibiru out of orbit, coming around this way every 2,000 some hundred years later. And the most interesting part was back in November, here's Nibiru, and Betelgeuse is a star way out here, and it's moving and its thing. And all of a sudden, for 4 days in November, it blocked what happened in Betelgeuse. And at that moment, Betelgeuse didn't go supernova, but it burped big time. And we didn't see it happen. And it hit our solar system June 1st. And that's why we have all these weird phenomena coming off the sun that we've never seen before. And the heat waves that we're having, and what we're about to have is the cold waves in the winter. And when I say cold, it's going to be exceptionally cold. And when that all occurs, what happens next? That's when your volcanoes start doing landmass changes. Right now, Mount Rainier is actually spewing lava, and was about 4 weeks ago, when Mauna Kea went off on Hawaii, Yellowstone went off at the same moment. That's scary. And when you realize where you are and in Yellowstone going, are you going to be that big hole in the United States that they show in future maps of the world? Heads up, wakey wakey, full of crock, Dundee might have said. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can sense that we're going to have some serious landmass changes shortly. And so, with that said, my best and most important recommendation I can give to everyone listening right now is that if you're producing 40% of the food you consume right now, by the end of this year, you have a high likelihood of survival. And if you don't, you're probably going to end up becoming a zombie, mindless, seeking food that you don't have, because your Teamsters and longshoremen and all the rest of it and their so-called just-in-time delivery is going to be really tight. And that's what a zombie is, a younger generation without food. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to upset you. I just wakey. It's time to start realizing that you need more independence than you currently enjoy.
Now, are you pretty convinced that was a planet or a dark star crossing Betelgeuse?
We're going to go through an event. The study I did when I was working out of the Pentagon under Nixon had 3 sigma error coefficient to it. That means a 99.9975% probability of the event occurring every 12,000 years. Now, 12,000 years, even with that level of accuracy, has a wiggle room. Everybody thought it was going to be 2012, and that movie came out on that subject, and then they started coming up with 2053, and now it's coming back down to 2030, blah, blah, blah. I think nobody knows, and I know I don't know, but I can sense that with all the volcanoes going off, Mount St. Helens is getting ready to rumble again. That means Seattle won't exist. And that's, if you look on future maps of the world, just Google it up, see what happens. Look at all the different maps. Scallion, there's a bunch of different ones, and they all are pretty much the same. The Mississippi and the Missouri are going to join together and cut America in two, all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. And right now, the Missouri is showing massive underground shifting with that potential happening. That's why these different maps show that happening, because that's predicted pretty much what's going to happen to America in terms of landmass changes. The last time this happened, Alaska was connected to Siberia. And now we've got those massive volcanoes going off up in Alaska, just like before. And now this one in the Aleutians, 8.7, that's extremely high volcano. I mean, we don't, So what I'm saying is there will be survivors, but you need to prepare yourself. And even my best guesses aren't that good. For example, Dulce, which has a lot of really underground caves and networking already established, isn't safe any more than the Tri-City area in Washington because of nuclear power plants being potential Fukushimas when the grid goes down. And I'm going to tell you, I honestly believe we're going to have a grid down situation this year, probably in late October, early September. I don't know, but that's my guess. It might be somewhere between September and October, maybe end of October, before the first of the year. And when that grid goes down, that's when the kids in high school go creepy. They're completely dependent on their cell phone. You and me, my generation, I didn't use it until I was forced to. You automatically know how to do it. I don't know how to do half of probably what you know how to do in terms of using your cell phone as a computer. I'm used to old school. That's, and technologies aside, I'm having issues now because I don't want to change from Microsoft 7. And yet 7 is no longer supported, yet they want to do some updates on my 7. Why would they want to do that when it works perfectly, or did? I went over to Linux. I'm using Mint variety now. I like the flavor in my mouth. Just kidding. But even Linux has 7 or 8 upgrades of different things every day. And that's crazy. I'm watching how we're being forced into taking the right door over the left door. The bad news is your choices both lead to the slaughterhouse, as a metaphor. Now, you tell me what you think about all of that. What's your thoughts and concerns? See, food. You got 3 minutes for air, 3 days for water, and 3 weeks for food. And down here in Oregon, where I live, we have good water, except that it's serpentine soils, which means you must test it for arsenic.
You're pretty convinced something serious is going to happen, like potentially soon then? You see this being an ongoing event of domino effect?
Well, yeah, you're going to have Fukushimas. If the grid goes down, that's one of the reasons why Texas wanted to leave the Union early on. They didn't like what was happening on the Mexican border, and they had their own grid. But now the politics are such that they can't do that. But that's originally why Jim Hightower and some of the other people wanted Texas to become its own state. What will probably happen is that the United States will break down into colonies again, and what isn't being developed, like Telluride, those will be run by. I have bunkers in Telluride that I dialogue with. I have them up in all of the bunkers I'm familiar with. Each one of them has a concern of unknowns on whether that's going to be a safe place or not. Everybody liked Telluride because of the way it is, but you have to look at other aspects of things like nuclear power plants, that kind of thing, because if the grid goes down, those things are going to not have the coolant that they need, and they're going to go. And so here it is again. See if this is someone and basically I'm on national radio right now. Thank you. And that was Gabrielle. She was going to call me earlier and she didn't.
Nice.
Well, everybody got their own things, and you're not dialing in what's going on. And I'm trying to be a warning beacon, like there's rocks here, be careful, you know. And I'm going to say that just growing things like potatoes and stuff like that, simple stuff, will be a really important concept for everyone now, because you can always barter your potato if you have extra for foods that you don't have. 40%. That's why I did the thing with Michael Moore in Chattanooga. Chattanooga is one of the few cities in America that uh, has production of more than 40% of the food consumed in that area. Another one would be up in Vancouver, BC. The Sikhs moved in from India and produced all the food for that large community there in the Okinawans. Food is going to become extremely scarce shortly, or extremely expensive, and then we're going to have life-changing events with landmass changes next year with all the volcanoes going off. I don't think they'll happen this year, but we're certainly getting indications with the tsunami that happened and that 8.7. I mean, that's a massive explosion. And I think we're going to have more of those shortly. And when they happen, we're going to have plates shifting like the New Madrid fault line. On the West Coast, it will be that volcano off of Crescent City, down there where they're still having a tsunami warning. That when that goes, you have 4 hours before the plate shifts. You need to seek high ground.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I wanted to show off your website now. This is the website, richardallenmiller.com. You click on the bookstore, and the books, I love your books. I've got several. And your
let me talk about that 1 second. You see the one there, the first one on brain drivers? That is one of 4 courses I took from Scientology back then on how to reprogram your belief systems. But I have one like this one right there that I'm pointing at, that ESP, not ESP, the biological effects on the body. That one runs all the different places in the body that are affected by electromagnetic fields, not just 5 and 6G. And by the way, 7.3 gigahertz is how they turn your cell phone into a weapon. The power tools are the 8 protocols I gave Navy SEALs. I have specials. I have specials where you can buy groups of them. The $5 one is the one now that includes living off the grid for 30 days and power and the non-local mind in a holographic universe. That was all part of the Power Tools series. And I do that because the book, buying a single book in Canada costs more to ship it to Canada than the book itself. And Europe is even worse. The brain driver is the work I did with Robert Monroe when he was still at Berkeley. And when he moved to the East Coast, he made a discovery on frequency following function that if you put 40 megahertz in one ear and 48 megahertz in the other ear, brain driver, what it does is it drives your brain down to 8 cycle, and then you can reprogram it. These books that I'm coming out with, are ahead of everything by 20 and 40 years. Today, in order to present a paper technical, you have to pay for it. That means they're controlling where technology is going rather than allowing technology to evolve and where it wants to go. You're as sick as I am. You know that, don't you?
Well, I'd use it.
It's alive, and I got worms in my brain.
All right, hold on. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see if I can find a tsunami.
The big wave starts to happen, and that's where it's going to happen down there. Point of the Arches up in Tatoosh Island, up in Washington State, is where these arches start. And that's where I studied with Strong Eagle and became a medicine man with the Sitka tribe out of North Vancouver. What songs and dances is, for example, one of the Sitka tribes, how the water got its wave is that there are 2 point arches up at Tatoosh Island, a hole in the wall, where one of them is large, and as the waves come in, the water comes out of the smaller one following the big one, with tears coming out. It's crying because it can't catch up to mommy. That's the way the song works. That's how the ocean got its soul. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm grateful because the Hawaiian governor had me come in and do all of the islands, preparing them for food, because every month now you're going to start to notice more escalation in survival needs.
Jump on over to our Patreon page. Just type in Patreon and then Leak Project. Become a Patreon, and you can listen to the rest of this podcast unedited, uncensored, along with thousands of hours of exclusive podcasts only available on our Patreon page. So be excellent to each other, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and thank you for listening to the podcast. Be excellent to each other and be the change you want to see. I'm Rex Bear.
You're as sick as I am. You know that, don't you?
Well, I'd use it. I'd use
it. It's alive, and I got worms in my brain.
it.